Hello, it is I, John Brown, the sentient mannequin of the guitar world, and this is the Tube Workshop Lulis, and it sounds like this. Yeah, that sounds sick. Yeah, the sentient mannequin of the guitar world. I stole that from a forum post. That was a comment somebody left on a thread where somebody else had posted one of my videos. And I love that stuff. Keep that coming, guys, because inevitably I'm running out of unhinged stuff to say at the beginning of these videos. The poster, the commenter later clarified that he likes the pink torpedo. That's me. Which almost ruined it because it'd be more fun to actually weaponize mean-spirited comments rather than people just picking up on my vibe. But anyway, I digress. This video is about the Tube Workshop Lulis, and this video represents a few novelties. For one thing, because I've had this amp on the channel before. I tried this at 42 Gear Street with Mario, the guy who made this amp, and Uwe Lulis, the guy whose amp this is. This is his signature amplifier. He's the guitarist for Accept and some other ventures. And the other novelty is I actually requested this amp. I asked Mario if he could send me one for a video. The reason is an experience I made with a different amplifier at 42 Gear Street. At 42 Gear Street, I tried the orange Baby amplifiers, and I took the Game Baby 100 home with me. And here at home, I got a completely different impression of it. I thought at 42 Gear Street that it was a decent amp, and playing it here and comparing it to the Rock Reverb, I thought it was a great amp. This amplifier I thought was great at 42 Gear Street, so I thought it might have the potential to sound outstanding to me in my home environment here. So I don't think this can be considered paid promotion, but it is promotion because I'm absolutely biased. I really like Mario. I think he's a great guy. I admire what he did, and I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this. A couple of years ago, he gave up a well-paying, I presume, and safe job to pursue his dreams of making amplifiers, and I find that incredibly inspiring. And I hope when and if I grow up one day and I find out what I want to do with my life, that I have the testicular fortitude to actually follow those dreams. So I want him to win, and that's one of the reasons why this amp is here today. Now, if I was a proper YouTuber, I would have put some melancholy piano music under that segment to elicit an emotional response from you guys, but I'm not. So here we go. This is Uwe Lulis' signature amplifier. It's loosely based on a Marshall 2204 with an integrated Boss SD1 boost, I think, with Mario's unique spin on things, because this is definitely a lot more than just your run-of-the-mill Marshall clone. For all intents and purposes, this is a single-channel amplifier with 2 modes, an integrated boost, and some switches for bright and deep. I'm pretty sure that this is a bright cap, and the deep, I should have asked Mario what that does. I assume it affects the filtering between the stages, or possibly a cathode bypass cap, or maybe even both, I don't know, but we'll get into how these sound, what they do later on. The 2 modes are JCM and JTM. I have absolutely no idea what those could stand for. Probably Joyful Crunchy Mode and Jazzy Tame Mode, because the JCM mode is the higher gain and the JTM is the lower gain. So wrong answers only in the comments. What do you think these letters stand for? And if you try to put the correct answer and what that actually means, you're getting bad. Anyway, before I forget, the amp comes with this neat 3-button foot switch. You can switch the onboard OD boost on and off, and I think you need the foot switch to do that. I couldn't find a button on the amp that does that. You can switch between the 2 switchable master volumes the amp has with the foot switch as well as mute the amplifier or switch to amp B. This amplifier has an integrated A-B switch, and then there's an output on the backside of the amp where you can pass the signal through to another amplifier if you want. If you're running a proper stage show with multiple amplifiers, that could be very convenient. Will save you a pedal. Or if you're not doing that and you want to save space on your pedal board and maybe not have as much signal loss due to pedals, you could feed that signal to a tuner and mute the amp and tune your guitar using that button on the foot switch. The way I've got the Lulis set up, it sounds like this. That sounds killer. I've got it on my Marshall 1960 AV with the Vintage 30 from 2024, smooth sounding, with a short SM57 where the dust cap meets the cone, so the usual setup. But I've got another cabinet mic'd up behind there that I might switch to with my KHE switcher. I love that sound. That is JCM Mode with the gain pretty high, you can see, and the onboard boost pretty high as well. That is without a front end boost, without a pedal boost, you know, like your overdrive tube screamer, or in my case, King and Yellow. And there's just a fantastic bloom in the note, and there's so much clarity and aggression. I was very surprised at how high gainy this amp gets without a front end boost. That is a real sick tone to me, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's turn off the OD boost and go to the jazzy tame mode. That is a beautiful slight overdriven tone, slightly crunchy. That is with the bright switch on. Let's turn that off. It's not super aggressive like it was on the Valve King that I did a video on the last month. That had a super aggressive bright switch. This is nice and subtle. Let's switch to single coils. Oh, that sounds nice. And for the first time in my life, I wish I had a chorus pedal. Let's see how clean this channel can get. I'm gonna switch to the other. That is a beautiful clean tone. That's with the humbucker with the single coils. Add the deep. I know I said I'm biased, but that's a beautiful clean tone. Anyway, let's up the gain again. I'm going to switch back to the other master. So the JTM mode almost stays completely clean, but we can switch in the onboard OD and that will have a drastic effect. In the setting I have it, it has a much more drastic effect than a clean tube screamer-ish front end boost would have. Let me demonstrate. I have my King and Yellow in front of me with the level at about 10 o'clock and the gain at 0, kind of like you'd set a tube screamer. I'm just gonna I'm just gonna play an open chord and switch it on and off. Now with the onboard OD in comparison. So it doesn't just add level, it adds some gain as well, but that is with it pretty high. If we dial it lower, we can really, what's the word? Fine tune the response. And that way we can get a nice bit of grit into the JTM channel, JTM mode. I'm actually going to switch to my EVH cab, which has a blackback G12H something, a blackback from 1978, which allegedly came from one of Accept's tour cabs. That was probably definitely before Uwe Lulis' time. But it's a funny coincidence that this is the signature amp for the guy from Accept, and I have a speaker allegedly from an Accept cab. I've got that blackback mic'd up with a Shure SM57 Unidyne 3, and the stock EVH speaker I've got mic'd up with the Sennheiser MD421, just so you know. And we can up the gain. I'm in trouble. So I'm going to dial the boost back. I think that really covers the jazzy tame mode. I'm going to put the gain at the middle and switch to JCM mode. And it seems the JCM mode kind of starts with the JTM mode stop. There's a tiny bit of overlap there, but pretty cool. There's no big gaps or anything. You can really cover the entire gain range. Screwed that up there. Anyway, this amp is a lot of fun to play. It's very inspiring. Let's up the gain some more. Let's play with the switches again at this gain setting. My impression in the room is that the bright switch becomes less effective with increased gain, which kind of smells like a bright cap to me. The deep switch, however, remains pretty much the same with regards to effectiveness. It adds a nice bit of heft, but it's not overbearing. I think I'm going to leave it off for the time being. With the gain this high on the JCM mode, I don't think it needs it. Now, and here is the first time I believe I can feel a bit of Mario's magic, because my experience with JCM 800s like 2203, 2204 types is with the gain this high, they start to sound a little unpleasant. The flub comes in. It's not like that with this amp. This is perfectly usable with the gain on max. However, we have some more onboard tricks. The OD boost. I'm actually going to back the gain up. I'm actually going to, back off the gain. I'm going to switch back to the Marshall cap up here. And that is a nice modern tone to me. And now my inclination would be to use a front end boost regardless. And you can. Let's add it. Gets a little more noisy with that. That might be a little over the top. If I were going to use a front end boost with this amp and the OD boost on, just for some different flavors and maybe to alter the response a little bit more, I'd probably back off the onboard OD boost a little bit. That's a lot of fun. For now, I'm just going to leave the front end boost, or no, my pedal boost, I'm sorry, off, and just play with the OD boost on the amplifier, because much to my surprise, I don't feel like it needs the pedal. Next, I want to explore how well the Lulis handles some extended range lower tones, and my friends at Gallagher Guitars sent me this Espada from their 10th anniversary run for that very reason, so that I can show you guys some some lower tunes, basically. Handled lower tunings just fine, if you ask me. I made some slight alterations. I backed the gain off a bit, but increase the boost. For the lower tunings, for some reason I like the gain a little lower, and I added some high end with the bright switch, up the treble and the presence slightly. But yeah. In fact, let's back the boost up a bit and add the King of the Yellow back in. It's a fun combination. Before we check out the EQ, I just want to try the JTM Mode with the Gallagher. I don't know what it is with this clean channel. It almost has a shimmer to it that is, it's just intoxicating to me. So yeah, this is a one-channel amplifier, but it's in no way limited or a one-trick pony. In fact, it does everything really well. It has an amazing clean channel. It does really fun crunches, which is not something I say very often because crunch tones really, I just don't care about them for the most part. But with this amp, they're just very inspiring, and it does high gain tones just fine. It has absolutely no problem, and high gain tones are just fine too. And I'm pretty sure in the shootout section we're going to see that it has no problem hanging with some of the heavy hitters here. But before we do that, I want to twist some EQ knobs. What I'm going to do is I'm going to loop a riff to my looper pedal in front of me while twisting the knobs back and forth and showing you frequency response graphs using Boxengo span, so you'll be able to hear and see how effective the EQ is on this amplifier. After that, we're going to pop it out of the head shell, take a look inside, and then we'll move on to the shootout section. That to me is a very effective EQ. It's a very usable EQ, much more effective than the EQ you'd find on an old Marshall like an 800 or even a Plexi. The treble knob in particular is quite sensitive. It's very effective. Up here it got pretty shrill, but just don't put it there if you don't want it shrill. And the presence knob was also quite effective, I'd say in the last third of the way. Before that, it's a little more subtle, a bit like the presence dial on a Peavey 5150. So that concludes the playthrough part of this demo video. I'm going to switch the amp off and we're going to take a look inside of it. Okay, the amp's out of its head shell. The head shell is really nicely made, really good woodwork. And what's a nice touch is all the hardware, all the mounting hardware for the amplifier appears to be stainless steel. So that's a nice touch. First thing you'll notice is the massive power transformer. This is the output transformer. This is a choke. We have a pair of JJEL34s and some tube amp doctor preamp tubes, as well as tube amp doctor filter capacitors. One thing I immediately noticed, let me turn this around for you guys, was this here. This is a Softtek, what is it, 5A or 4. I think this is a rectifier tube. I didn't expect that. Mario may have told me about that. If he did, I've already forgotten about it. Surprising. I didn't expect that. I thought it had silicone die rectification. That might explain its lively character, the way it responds. Okay, next thing is to look inside the amplifier. And I haven't done this before. I haven't looked in. So this will be my genuine reaction. Guys, I might cry. This is beautiful. Holy shit. I'm gonna have to grab this camera. You guys have to see this up close. Look how everything's laid out. Everything's labeled. Look how neat all that is. Look at the solder joints. Look at the wiring. Cable management. As some of you guys might know, I'm in the middle of the process of building a tube amp doctor amp kit. This one right here. So I'm in awe. This is very inspiring. Look how tidy all this is. I wish I were that good. I believe this will be the bias supply. That's probably a hum balance pot. So it probably has AC heaters, tube heaters. Look, he's even got a tiny bit of ice insulation or heat shrink hose on this particular leg where he's, I believe, has soldered together this capacitor leg and that resistor so that it doesn't make contact with the other resistors, just as protection. The ICs that are in are seated. This is thick pushback wire. I love how the pins on the preamp sockets are color coded. There's trimmers here for the send and return level of the effects loop, so one could tweak that if we wanted as well. The master volumes are kind of in a special housing. It says TWS Tube Workshop Wonder Volume F-Type PPIMV, so post phase inverter master volume. There must be some proprietary tech in there. This here, I believe, is probably the supply for the LEDs, and there's an LED strip in there. You can change the color on that even with an app. I didn't ask Mario about that because I'm not terribly interested in changing it from red to blue, but you can customize it if you want that. Guys, I could look at this all night. Mario is definitely a master of his craft. This is so nice to look at. And having attempted to do something like this, just wiring something up like this, I have the utmost respect for that. This is beautiful. Anyway, this is probably not riveting television for you guys, so I'm going to pop it back in its head shell, and then we're going to do a shootout, and then I'll meet you back for my final thoughts. Time for the shootout, and my memory's getting worse and worse by the second, so I'm pretty sure I've either said this 5 times in this video already or not at all, but the amps I'm going to shoot out against the Lulis are my Peavey 5150, my Marshall 1959 SLP, and the Lichtlaerm Audio Prometheus. The 5150, you know, there's always a 5150 in the shootout sections. It's kind of the yardstick, the people's metal tone, so to speak, and that's why the Peavey 5150 is in this. I chose the Marshall 1959 SLP because the plexi is kind of the quintessential Marshall tone, at least to me, and You know, obviously there's quite a bit of Marshall DNA in this, so the question is, can it do the plexi sound? And finally, I asked you guys on all the platforms what the fourth amp should be in this video. I suggested possibly something German. You guys predominantly wanted to see the Prometheus, which makes me kind of happy because that to me is the ultimate modern metal amp. It's been one of my favorites. It's been my favorite for the last 2 years. So I'm curious to see how the Lulis stacks up against that. So we have the classic, the people's metal tone, and the modern. Let's see how the Lulis fares. So start with the 5150, and the 5150 sounds like this. And immediately there's a big tonal difference. The Peavey 5150 has those, people call them cocked wah mids. There's a lot of thick mids anyway. The Lulis is a lot sharper sounding. Maybe if we up the mids a bit, and it's also more aggressive. I'm going to tone down the OD of it a bit and see how close we can get. I'm gonna dial this a little lower. To me, a 5150 needs a front. To me, a 5150 needs a front end boost to sound tight and modern. So I'm gonna engage my thing in yellow from Lichtlaerm Audio. I might have to adjust the Lulis to sound a little less tight, but let's see how that works. I have one little problem. To me, the 5150 sounds better with the boost, but the Lulis sounds better without the boost. So what I'm going to do is, my Lichtlaerm King in Yellow kind of sits on the pedal board in front of the amp switcher behind me. So I'm going to take this Maxon OD808X and stick it just in front of the 5150 to blah words. Yeah, I think that does it for that part of the Shootout. The 5150 has that quacky sound that will cut through in the mix very well. The Lulis, kind of tighter, kind of meaner to me, surprisingly. Well, let's move on to the next Shootout against the Marshall 1959 SLP. So the way my plexi is dialed is the high treble loudness, so gain 1 is almost maxed, and the normal gain, you probably can't see it, is at about, what is that, 2:30, almost 3 o'clock. I find that if I dial it above that, it kind of flubs out. The EQ doesn't really matter because it barely does anything at all. And it sounds like this. And for the Lulis, I'm going to take out the OD. Okay, I've cut out the dialing back and forth a bit because that's really boring, but the way the Lulis is set up, it sounds like this right now. And the plexi. So kind of similar game levels, similar characters. The plexi has a different kind of kerrang. The high end is different. It's not bright. There's just a glassy quality to it. However, one must say that these amps are operated completely differently. The master volume on the Lulis is pretty low right now. It's not super loud in the room, while the plexi is cranked going into this 2 notes torpedo live above the amp switcher. That's really the only way I can use it here in the home, because unless your neighbors are 2 miles away or you live in a war zone, there's no way you can really crank a plexi without ending up in The Hague, unfortunately. So with that said, I think they sound kind of similar, but the plexi really needs a boost in front. So I'm going to engage the Lichtlaerm King in Yellow. The differences to me in the room are in the high end. The Lulis has more high end clarity than the plexi, but that could be due to the power amp in the plexi really being loaded. And that makes a difference, especially for lead lines, for higher notes. Let me demonstrate. There's this fundamental thickness in the plexi when you play lead lines, but I really think that is due to the power amp saturation, due to the phase inverter and the power tubes in the plexi really being punched in the face. I'm pretty sure if the master was cranked on the Lulis, we'd get similar results. But even though this is an unfair fight because the Marshall is obviously cranked to all hell and back, the plexi holds its own, yeah. Now, this is the part of the shootout I've been waiting for most. How does the Lulis stack up to the Prometheus? The Prometheus is a very modern sounding amp and one of my absolute favorites. And the way it's set up, it sounds like this. So in the room, the Lulis is a bit louder, so I'm going to turn up the Prometheus a bit. I'm kind of surprised how well the Lulis holds up. I didn't expect that. It's very close to the Prometheus, in fact. Yeah. Wow. The mids are a bit different on the Prometheus, but gain-wise and Am I crazy? Are those the closest sounding amps in the Shootout? The 5150 sounded distinctively different, as did the Plexi a bit. But I'm kind of freaked. The Prometheus is a little more aggressive, but if we dial it cut back a bit, yours is a shocker to me. Yeah, I think that concludes the Shootout. I have to collect my thoughts for a sec. So that's why the Shootout sections in these videos are so important to me, because like a lot of people, I need a reference to put a tone and context, and often I hear with my eyes or let the marketing blurbs or the descriptions influence the way I perceive something. But with the amp switchers, those biases, they kind of disappear. They have to. The only thing that's left is the actual tones and therefore the truth. And the Lulis was a bit of a shocker for me in this, because I expected it to be good. I expected it maybe to be able to hang with the 5150 high gain wise, because I'd already sampled it a bit at 42 gear street, but how close it was to the Prometheus was genuinely shocking to me. It's a really fun amp, and I'm pretty sure I've come across as very enthusiastic about it throughout this video. And as I said, I'm very, very biased towards Mario's work because I like the guy and I appreciate what he does. And you'd be forgiven in thinking that I'm trying to sell this amp to you at this point, but I'm not really, because I probably wouldn't be very successful in selling this amp to you, because this is a €3,800 amp. And I can already hear some of these guys type, no, it's far too expensive. Shut up, piss off. This amp isn't for you. This amp isn't for everybody. It's kind of like a track car. I mean, a GT3 RS, that's a track car. It goes very fast. It's expensive. There's not a lot of luxuries in it. It's purpose-built and it's not exactly cheap. But at the same time, you can have a lot of fun on the track in a used Golf GTI. So you can drive to the shop and buy milk and both, but maybe taking your GT3 RS isn't the most cost-effective thing. I hate car analogies. I don't know why I keep making them. They're always inherently flawed. But what I'm trying to say is, you can buy a used 5150 or a PRS MT15. That'll get you there, as will the Lulis. The Lulis is kind of like, it's an artisan piece. I mean, you can spend a fortune on a wooden chair built by an artisan where he takes months or maybe years to make it, like Ron Swanson in Parks and Recreation. Or you can go to IKEA and buy a chair there. At the end of the day, they're both chairs. What this is a piece of art. It's a statement. It's a passionate engineers and musicians statement on what a modded JCM 800 style amp can sound like. And I think we really need both. I mean, there's a place in the market for all of that. Like the PRS MT15s, I love that amp, by the way, but I love this amp as well. Even though I understand why people might be upset, it's out of my budget too. I'm going to be very sad to send this amp back, but I'm already trying to justify ways in buying it. Like, I've got two diesel habits that are very, very similar. Maybe one of them has to go because, yeah, this got very close to my favorite amp, the Prometheus, while having nicer cleans than the Prometheus and also more fun crunches. So, yeah, I'm in trouble. I'm going to speculate here a bit just because I'm already way too deep into it. I'm pretty sure Mario could outsource some of his designs to factories in China or go to straight edge manufacturing in England and offer cheaper amps for the market. At the same time, that is a very different kind of business. And being an engineer myself, I love making things. I love creating things. And my career has kind of pulled me away from that into project management, which I don't particularly enjoy. But somehow I seem to be the least bad at it in the scenarios I work in. I'd rather be making things. And I think, and I'm going to speculate here because I haven't asked him, this is probably what Mario wants to do. He just wants to make things as well as he can, true to his vision. And €3,800 is a lot of money for an amplifier. But as we saw on the inside, it's very well made. It's very well thought out, layout-wise. Conceptually, it is sound. It really offers the maximum of variety with a minimum on controls. There's not a lot of stuff that can break. Pretty darn good if you ask me. And I know for a fact that he's not getting rich off these. I mean, 3,800 euros is a lot of money again, but in Europe, you'd pay more for a Friedman, you'd pay more for a Soldano SLO, like 300-400 euros more. And economies of scale play a role as well. I mean, compare them to other more boutique German brands like Diesel. A Diesel is slightly more affordable than this. Like the VH4, I think, retails for something like 3,100, 3,200, so cheaper. But then again, Diesel is 4 to 5 people, and they make a lot more amps. I'm curious to see where Tube Workshop's journey goes. I really hope it's a success because this is a beautiful amplifier, and I've crawled up Mario's butt enough for now. Let me know what you think in the comments below. How do you like this amp? I'm going to put this amplifier back in its box before I start crying because it has to go back. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day, week, month, whatever. I hope to see you back for the next video. Bye-bye.